Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, hello to our Nest family. Daniel Garb here along with Drew Jones. Great to have you with us for a massive West Coast Eagles pod. We've held fire a little bit, Drewy, just to see what the club did with Adam Simpson. It all got a little bit weird there at the end of the season. It seems as if the board were chopping and changing their mind over the last fortnight or so. But Simmo is staying. He's got 2 years left on his deal and he will be at the helm for the start of 2024 at least. It's a big call by the club against the grain. Hello to you, mate. We're going to break it down in a big way along with many other pertinent subjects at the Eagles right now.
Hey, Garby, Simmo Stays. And you had the honour of breaking the news to me via text message because I had gone totally offline on Monday night after work, hadn't looked at my phone, had put it on Do Not Disturb and was cooking dinner. And literally,
what were you doing? Yeah. I'm curious. I know I should have asked you before, put you on the spot, but what was going on that you didn't know until the next morning?
So was it the next morning? Yeah, I'd had a long day on Monday, and I just cashed out my football chips for the day, and that's amazing. So it was a Tuesday morning.
Yeah, you may be not telling us the full story, but that's okay. We don't need to pry anymore.
No. Honestly, I just took the evening off football, didn't watch 360, and I'd actually done an update on AFL Tonight, having spoken to a few people about West Coast, because clearly the silence was just deafening and it just felt to me like there was going to be something announced in the next sort of day or so. And then literally, I think it was about an hour after I did my news update where I talked about West Coast that they put out the release. So there was a reason why everyone was unreachable on Sunday and into Monday, because they were thrashing things out.
Yeah, so I think we should break down how they've come to this decision first and then what we think of it. There's two parts to this. Plenty other discussion points around the club as well. The number one pick now, which we've got back, what do we think we'll do with that? Let's talk about that in detail. I've got a bit of info on where the Eagles might be placed, which I'm keen to share with the listeners. We'll look at the season as a whole. Obviously very disappointing, but what do we make of the end of it? Which players are likely to go? And then the John Worsfold Medal. How's it likely to pan out? I think we all know who the likely winner will be, but what about the top five in the order? We'll have a bit of a crack at that as well. But in terms of how it all came to be, I'm not sure what your view is, Drew. I haven't spoken to you about it, but I feel as if, we discussed it at the time of the Sydney defeat, and that statement came out, worst loss in club history, that Simmo was on the cliff. And then, a bit of an upturn in form meant he stepped back from it a little bit. And the board said, all right, we're going to stick fat. We're going to hold on to Simmo here. Then the loss to the Dockers meant that there must have been some unrest and a few voices saying, no, we've got to make a change now. And the board, I don't think the board really had a clue. I think they were in limbo a little bit as to what to do. And then for whatever reason, maybe it was Justin Langer's strong voice, having been in that position recently himself with the Australian cricket team and being a board member, a bit of fan support. The payout was obviously a factor, whatever it was. And then I think the other key part of it is, they might have looked at the list and gone, well, if we make a change now, what hope does a new coach have? Like if we bring someone in and they're an Adam Kingsley, Craig McRae type, what have they got to work with? We could be wasting potentially our next premiership coach. So let's give Adam Simpson the chance to see out the final 2 years of his contract. I'm not saying it's the right decision, but it feels like that's the way they've come to it, rather than making a change now and potentially putting themselves in even more trouble.
Yeah, I think you've covered it pretty well in terms of all the different factors that played into it. Now, I've really tried to do some digging and as my role as a journalist, but I tend to not go too deep on West Coast as a rule and stick to the Victorian clubs. But it sounds to me like they were, after the Derby defeat, if the Bulldogs had have given us a genuine touch-up at Marvel Stadium, there's a chance that Simmo would have been gone after that game. A pretty strong chance. But in actual fact, the exact opposite happened, which forced a rethink, and certainly the optics of sacking a coach after a rousing win and also one of the best upset victories in West Coast history. Certainly you couldn't have let him go that week. And then I think it just forced a rethink. Certainly there were people on the board who were 50-50. Obviously there were some parts of the board that were ready for Simpson to go. And you mentioned Justin Langer there. I'm sure that he played a massive part in Adam Simpson staying, and certainly even Simmo mentioned Langer in his press conference about how great of a support that he had been through this whole period. And I don't think we need to spell out the reasons why Justin Langer was probably cheering for the current coach to stay in place, given what happened to him. Rowan Jones is sort of the steady football man on the board, and he would have had to spell out the reasons why, because of having hands tied behind his back with COVID and injuries and various other things that have happened to Simmo. I'm guessing that Rowan Jones would have been on Adam Simpson's side, because I just can't see a scenario where essentially the football director of the club was recommending a sacking and it not happen. So assume that Langer and Jones are on Simpson's side. The board is made up, Garby, of some extremely successful business people who have got backgrounds in law and politics. So it's a really eclectic mix, but it's not heavy on football people. So I'm sure they took Jones's opinion into strong account. And then perhaps Nisbet was in the Simpson camp as well. But it is unusual for someone like Eddie Maguire to report that Simpson was going to be sacked. That really swayed me thinking that it was going to happen, because his intel and inside knowledge is so good, and his role really is not a breaking news journalist. So for him to go with that on Footy Classified, I thought was pretty telling. So that to me says that there were people at inside the club or on the board who believed that he was gone. So a lot did change in that 2 weeks. There's no doubt. Over the last month, the team acquitted themselves better, but the derby was really disappointing. Ultimately, I think they've probably landed, I reckon, in the right camp, but I'm probably 60-40. Garby, I don't know about you. As the season's gone on, there's a part of me that thinks, well, there's 2 years to go on the contract. If he's committed to the rebuild, then, if we're 0-10 next year and we're losing by 100 points again, then maybe that's something that needs to be revisited. But right now, I don't have a major issue with it.
Yeah, so we've broken down the why. Now, do we think it's right? Look, I'm none the wiser. I'm in the same position I was on Adam Simpson at the start of the season. We don't know how it's going to go. I mean, there could be an upturn in form next year and we have a Hawthorn type season and things are looking positive. Everyone goes, yeah, what a great decision to hang on to Simmo. But we could also get smashed again in the first 2 months, and then a change is made, and then we're looking for an interim coach. So, which we thought would probably happen at some stage this season. I understand the rationale, though. I do. I just think, we're at the start of a rebuild. As I said before, if you could find the right coach, but they could be wasted. They really could. And it's really difficult coming in after someone who's been there for so long. So there's that compounding the situation potentially as well. So when you're paying Adam Simpson out 2 years, even though we've got a bucket load of money, and then putting someone in and they're on a hiding to nothing in a way, is there much benefit? I'm not sure. I think the way in which we finished the season, I understand what the board has done. I'm not angered by their decision. But is it the right decision? I don't know. We've all got short memories these days. Let's not forget how many hefty losses we had, not just this season, but also last season. The voice has grown tired, but then the list is being turned over so much as well that so many of the players coming in are new, the voice isn't that old for them. So maybe that's a factor too. There's so many balls up in the air on this. I don't, me personally right now, Drewy, if Adam Simpson had 1 year left in his contract, he'd be gone. Let's be honest on that one. If he only had next year to go, there's no way he's still in the job. The fact that he's got 2 years, I think, has saved him. Personally, I'm not sure he'll be there at the start of 2025. I think he needs to have a big season to then get maybe another year on top of that. My gut feeling right now is regardless of whether it's midway through the season or end of the season, he gets the Eagles through another year. And then halfway through next year, they're looking strongly at the next best young coach coming through and giving them the keys.
If he only had 1 year left in his contract, then he would have been sacked after the Sydney game.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But no coach ever survives a 171-point defeat. So, yeah, that's a whole other conversation because it's a hypothetical. So, he's still there. Yeah, I think you and I are on the same wavelength here with why Simpson is still at the club and what he offers to us in the next 2 years. If we get Tim English and Harley Reid's like an AFL superstar and we have him at the start of 2025, like this Eagles team, like there's a chance that we bounce pretty quickly. We've shown an ability to do it, and there's plenty of teams around the league that when you nail your draft, you can bounce quickly. So it'd be interesting to see and forecast forward whether Simpson is there to try to take the team back up the ladder. I'm sure that's what he'll be hoping for, but the results would have to turn around and things would have to change quickly. And we know that there's a fair bit of change required within the football department to get us back up to the cutting edge and back to the right standard. Will you just quickly, on the farewell game, I think the Eagles handled it pretty well. Were you buoyed by the amount of crowd support that Adam Simpson seemed to have and the sense that almost the fans were rallying against the media coverage of Simmo and the fact that he was likely to be sacked?
Yeah, I mean, I found it a little bit odd. Like, nice. I mean, good on him. He's brought the club a lot of success. Everyone likes Adam Simpson, regardless of how frustrated supporters might be. I don't think that should have been much of a factor. I don't. And I'd hope the board didn't factor it too much into their decision because if he had been removed, I don't think the rebellion against it would have been that strong. They were it was almost like a show of appreciation for him. We love you, Simmo, and love you for what we've done. I know there was a bit of a movement like let him stay, but it's not as if they were, protesting outside Eagles headquarters. I just don't think it was that big of a factor one way or another. But at the same time, great. Like, I think it shows a strong club and it shows a club that's willing to not buy into all the media talk and remember the good times as well and have longer memories than some others. So I like that in a sense.
Did you hear Jared's? Did you hear Jared on SEN that he did his sort of monologue?
Yes,
on West Coast?
I liked his. I liked it. I liked Robbo on it as well. Yep. What I will say is people who are like Kane Cords and a few others, I like Kane as a person, by the way, so nothing against him personally, but some of his commentary and some of the others saying, this is a stupid move because the Eagles are going to go a long way backwards before they start going forwards. How could we go backwards any further? Like, how? I just think that's a nonsense. You literally cannot get any worse. We finished bottom. Our percentage was Fitzroy-esque. Like, we are going to get better. I'm not saying we're going to be outside the bottom four next year, but the injuries can't be any worse than the last 2 years. Yes, we've lost some experienced players, but it's not as if they were playing a lot of games anyway, right? Like, we are going to get better. So I think we haven't, I heard Kane Corn say we haven't started the rebuild yet. That's not true. We've had one of the youngest teams out on the park on a lot of occasions this year. They're already ahead in their development as opposed to where they would be at other clubs because they've been forced to play. We're only going to add more of them. So I think we have started the rebuild, early stages of it, but we have, and we will improve. How much, who knows?
One thing we have done is we've actually probably worked out a lot of players on our list, whether they're going to be there going forward. So as much as we haven't got all of the talent in who's going to be a part of the rebuild, we're quite far advanced on knowing where a lot of players are at. So once we start turning over the list and getting more young players in and hopefully bringing in some 21, 22-year-olds potentially from other clubs, if we can make that all work, then it could happen fairly quickly. Adam Simpson he's in an interesting spot, isn't he, Garby? When you think about where a coach would normally be on the pressure scale when they're rebuilding, like it starts at the bottom, like you're the least likely coach to be sacked when you're rebuilding at the start. If the Eagles have theoretically started their rebuild in the last year, but Simmo is in the gun almost even though he's got the 2 years on the contract. But if we come out and are as bad next year as we are right now, which we concede is unlikely, if it happens, then he is going to be under pressure straight away. So as much as we feel like we've resolved our coaching situation right now, things can change really quickly. Like the pressure doesn't get dialed down too much. He doesn't get
not at all.
He doesn't get much leeway next year if it's anything like what we've seen this year. I just don't see a scenario where we're as listless after a full preseason and hopefully a fit list.
So I think he is in some ways seeing out the storm, right? But if the storm hits again at the start of next season, well, then he's gone. There's a change. Now, people might say, well, why would Adam Simpson want to do that? If that's the lay of the land, why would he agree? Wouldn't he say, just, I'll resign or whatever, find someone else if you just want me to see out this contract and you don't think I'll be there long term? But successful people back themselves. He will back himself to have a really good season next year, a really encouraging season to the point where the board might give him an extra year and say, all right, things have turned around. Everyone's on board here. Players are enthused. We can see this going in the right direction. You are still our man. He'll back himself to do that. He's also got a young family. He's set up in Perth. He's on a lucrative contract. He doesn't want to give that all up and be in limbo. So there's a human element to it as well, which people don't always take into account. And I can understand him wanting to stay on with all that in mind.
Yeah, so I don't know this for sure in any way. This is me just hypothesising, but I would think West Coast board would be saying to themselves privately, by round 16 next year, let's hope that we've got a good idea of the direction that's the team is heading and how Simmo's going, because if you are going to replace him, then you want to get a decent run-up to having a look at the best candidates.
Yeah.
So, sacking Simmo after round 9 next year, it puts us in a tough spot. We've seen what happened with Richmond and Damien Hardwick, where you're seeing out so much of the season with an interim coach. That is not an ideal situation because, Jamie Graham and Dean Cox, who might be 2 candidates for the job next, are both locked into their roles at Fremantle and Sydney respectively. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the way that it all plays out. Just one thing, Garby, we've talked a lot about turnover within the football department, but just on John Worsfold, do you think we need to bring Woosha back to the club? And do you think a spot on the board for him as a football person and just as a really experienced and calm operator, do you think it's the right time to get him back?
Yes. I mean, I don't know what spots are available on the board. I don't know how well the board functions. People talk about the stuff, but unless, we don't know how assistant coaches operate. How are we going to know how boards operate? It's a really difficult one to answer. We don't know how Woosha operates in that space. But he seems to have all the acumen for it, excellent knowledge of the club, incredible football experience, a bit of business experience as well, always keeps a calm head. Yeah, maybe we need another football voice on the board to go with Rowan Jones. But, yeah, it seems like it's a smart call, but we don't quite know exactly. I think we should touch on the number 1 pick and what the club is likely to do. So we got it back against the odds. I think we all know how we feel about games at the end of the season. It's all bittersweet. We always want to win, but at the same time, there was a lot at stake this season more often than not. And so I can understand why a lot of fans were happy to lose potentially and get the number 1 pick. We didn't expect it, but North went and got the 4 points against Gold Coast, and so it landed back in our lap. Now, my understanding is the club, in order to trade the number 1 pick, would need to be blown away. Now, that might seem like an obvious call, but it needs to be overs. It's not just a straight up, here's a couple of picks for number 1. You get an extra player in the first round. It needs to be really good, is my understanding, because the club would be happy to take Harley Reid. They are on board with what everyone else is saying in footy, that he's a generational talent. But I do think if they are willing to trade Harley Reid or the number 1 pick, it would only be with the guarantee that they get Daniel Curtin. That's my feeling.
Yeah, so in terms of the West Coast recruiting staff, I've been told that they're essentially enamoured by Reid and the idea of having what they see as a generational talent at the football club. And you can understand that. That's the prevailing view. West Coast haven't had access to such a talent for a long time, and we were extremely smart in taking Chris Judd and looking past the injury issues, and it worked out really well, even though he was a flight risk. My view on this, Garby, is that AFL has changed since we drafted Chris Judd, and the 18-year-olds that are being drafted have essentially changed. So the Jason Horne-Francis situation is much more likely to happen now than it was when we drafted Chris Judd. It was still viewed as a badge of honour to be a one-club player, to show, to repay the faith shown to you by the team that's drafted you. That has lessened as each year goes by. So I understand the risks associated with Harley Reid, and I'm sure West Coast are very much across those, but also, West Coast backed themselves. We just got hammered for 2 years and we retained our coach despite what everyone was telling us from the outside to do. So what West Coast want to do, they'll do. They'll back themselves. But my view is North Melbourne, if they had the number 1 pick, there was no way that the AFL was going to hand them pick 2 as well for Ben Mackay. But now that they have picked 2, I think there's a chance they end up with pick 3.
Yeah.
So my view, and maybe it's overs, but I think pick 2 and pick 3 and West Coast send another pick back would be acceptable for Harley Reid.
Yeah, and that's okay. And then we take
Curtin, and then we get Dersma or McKercher or whatever, Watson, whatever we want. I'll guess they'll look at a gun midfielder with a view that Curtin plays sort of defence and mid.
Yep.
So,
and then would we have to give our second round pick 19, do you think, at the moment?
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they'll be keen not to. They might try and use Port Adelaide second round pick. But it's challenging. The fact that Curtin he seems to have just taken off in terms of his draft stocks to the point where now, like that Gold Coast pick at 4, that doesn't even feel like early enough to get him.
Yeah, exactly right.
I think North take him before us if they have the picks and we take Harley Reid. So I just don't. Whereas there was maybe a chance previously, I thought we could have both. Now I don't subscribe to that. So it's interesting, isn't it?
I hate draft tampering. I hate it enormously. But wouldn't it be refreshing if, like, Daniel Curtin came out and said, "I didn't want to play for West Coast, so don't bother taking me." Right?
Yeah, it would be nice to have it come the other way for one time. One time, it's not a Victorian saying, "Don't draft me. I'm not leaving." Yeah, it would be nice. Unfortunately, probably not going to happen. But yeah, what's your gut feel if you had to pick it right now?
I think that's the likely scenario, that if we do trade it, it's for North's pick 2 and 3, and we give something back the other way. It probably has to be pick 19. I think we're completely exploiting North if it's anything more than that, but maybe there are trades that happen and we can move a few picks further down, and we keep pick 19, to give them the second round pick, which is going to be around 30-ish or so. We'd be lucky if we managed to manufacture. We'd be lucky if we manufactured it that way. But I think that's the likely scenario, and I think Eagles fans would be happy with that. All right, you take Reid, we'll take Curtin and another gun midfielder, and so be it. But I wouldn't be bothered if we took Harley Reid. I mean, if we didn't get the deal that we wanted and we kept him, after Jada and Nick Natanui, it'd be the most exciting draft pick the Eagles have had in a long, long time. So it'd be great. I'd back us to convince him to stay at the Eagles long term. And if he didn't, you'd still get pretty good compensation in a couple of years' time. So, I'd be pretty excited by that as well. We're in a strong position either way, that's for sure. And, it's going to be one of the more enthusiastic Eagles off seasons that we've had when you look at the form of Ginbey and Hewitt as well. We're now looking at our midfield for our next premiership. Ginbey, Hewitt, and then Reid or someone else with a absolute superstar utility player like Daniel Curtin hopefully coming in there. So those are the players we're going to have to work with moving forward, and that's great. It's starting to move in the right direction now, but obviously it's been a horrible season and there is still so much uncertainty because Adam Simpson is staying as to what might transpire in the first 2 or 3 months of next season.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Just on and on other players that might come in. So we've been linked heavily to Matty Flynn from the Giants as the backup ruck option to Bailey Williams. I think Jamison he's got another year in his contract, but I think he's in a bit of trouble long term. So we need a backup ruck. Matt Flynn's been linked. I like him. Makes sense for him to leave. Briggs has gone way past him at the Giants, but he's still a good ruck, Matty Flynn. So I think that'd be a good one. And then Devin Robertson's the other one that we seem likely to get from Brisbane, who we've been linked to for a couple of years. Apparently we have a 4-year offer on the table for him.
Yeah, he's throwing a little bit of Jeremy Sharp action from the Gold Coast, which should get him for cheap, given he hasn't played for a couple of years. It'd be nice to get a few younger guys through the door. I heard Scott Lycett potentially as a free agent to be the backup ruck.
Okay.
As a short-term option, it makes sense if they're throwing the kitchen sink at Tim English, because then Matty Flynn would find himself in a bit of a state behind potentially English and Bailey Williams. But, I mean, you could pick out any, Jordan Sweet, Matty Flynn, all those backup rucks from around the league. That would be great to have. It'd be a slap in the face for Jordan Sweet if he came to us and then English was again ahead of him the next season. But we desperately need another ruck option to give. Like, you could see Bailey Williams starting to tire in the last couple of games. He had the flu in the game against Essendon, struggled that day, nearly got suspended. So he's been, one of our success stories for the year. It's interesting. I keep hearing people say, West Coast think he's going to be a better forward than ruck. If that is the case, that's going to be a great result for us. You just see little glimpses, don't you? But his ruck work has improved so much.
Yeah, so Big Bad Bustlings look good inside forward 50. He's taking some good grabs. He's looked good on the lead. He's looked fast on the lead.
He's quick.
And smart on the lead. So, that changes the opinion around English. Like, all right, we can get him in and Bailey can play second ruck forward. The Dockers have had that issue because Jackson has been hit and miss as a forward, but really good in the ruck. So, they're in a quandary, and obviously we know about the Demon situation where Grundy just can't play forward. So you don't want to be in that situation where you're paying so much to English, but you don't really need two out-and-out rucks. So, they're going to work on that aspect of his game. And, next season, if we do bring in a Flynn or a Sweet or a Lycett, then, you play him a lot more forward in the hope that you're going to get English, and you're setting things up after that. So, that's encouraging as well.
Yeah, I like the idea of if we do bring in one of these more experienced backup rucks, then you have the flexibility to actually let Bailey work on his craft as a forward in game, as well as then playing the odd game as the number one ruck. Yeah, it's an enticing prospect for what potentially is to come. So what about, we've talked about Bailey as one of our best improvers. If you had to pick your top 5 for the John Worsfold Medal, doesn't have to be in any particular order, but who do you think's had a good enough season to be in the reckoning?
Well, I'll go in order. I'll go from 5 up to 1. I'll go 5 would be Jaden Hunt, 4 Bailey Williams, 3 Liam Duggan, 2 Oscar Allen, and 1 Tim Kelly. That'd be my 5 to 1.
Yes, that's definitely the top 3.
Yeah.
There's no way around that. I mean, Hunt had a pretty good year and he played every game. So that definitely makes sense. And then outside of Bailey Williams, I can't see who else fits in that top 5. I'm just scrolling through the playing list to make sure we haven't left anyone out. But like Tom Barath didn't play enough games. He'll probably poll well in the ones that he did play, but not enough. Hearn probably polls well, but again, he missed a lot of games. Shuey polls well in the 12 games or 14 games that he played.
Yeah.
Brady Hoff probably sneaks in. He probably sneaks in the top 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not a lot else. Gaff was underwhelming despite the amount of games he played. Tom Sheed didn't have a great year. Jake Waterman had a good sort of 13.
A lot of people asking where Dom Sheed fits into our team moving forward. He's the one interesting one. I've had a lot of people message me going, do the Eagles need to get rid of Dom Sheed? Like, is he part of the midfield? Can he play in other positions? An interesting one.
Yeah, he was playing sort of high half forward in that 2018 Premiership team, wasn't he? Until Gaff went out, he sort of played a bit more mid-time. So does he just need to go back to that role?
Yeah, but is he quick enough? The game gets quicker all the time. He's a little bit older, injuries. Like, is he one player we should look at getting currency for now that hasn't been discussed? Not sure. I think there's probably merit in that one, considering Barassa's staying now. He's in that age bracket where, you don't want to get rid of Dom Sheed after what he did in 2018, but it might suit everyone to look at those options. What would your top 5 be? Would you agree with mine or any changes?
No, I think we're on the same wavelength. I just don't think there's much room to even disagree. There's not enough players who had good years to really play with that top 5 too much.
Duggan or Allen could maybe switch positions, 2 and 3. Maybe Duggo finishes second, Allen third.
Yeah, I would rate Allen as second in our best and fairest.
Yeah.
Whether or not the votes reflect that is a different thing, but to have kicked that many goals, to be in the All-Australian squad in a team that is getting absolutely annihilated, and then, switching into the back line and being standing captain, I think it was a pretty big year for Oscar Allen. And he, this is the step forward that we expected him to take, but he still had to go out there and do it on a historically bad team. So he's had a great year.
Yeah. The players that go. So it seems like West and Clark and Winder, they're the 3 who are unfortunately guarantees to be delisted, and probably O'Neill as well. It'd be a surprise if he got another year, considering he seems to be Simmo's whipping boy and Simmo's staying on. So I'd imagine those 4 are gone. Any other changes that you think?
Does Foley get another year, do you think?
Maybe.
I don't mind him. I just think we haven't really used him, and he especially doesn't get picked when we have fit players. I'm not sure.
He also had injuries.
Yeah.
He also had injuries. We've all seen a bit of talent there, but, Foley and Rotham are the 2. It's like, one could go, one could stay. Very similar players.
Yeah, I think Rotham will stay more likely than Foley. Jamison, I think he's touch and go. Barnett's probably almost ready to step into above him. Just needs a bit more time in the gym. So, yeah, love Cal, but he hasn't really come on in his ruck role. Does Zane True, do they roll one more round with him? I think they liked his contribution against the Dogs. He can certainly play a role.
Yeah. Don't know. I guess it depends on how deep the draft is. He's one of those where it might be like, if we're taking an extra pick, sorry.
Yeah.
Or if one of the rookies showed enough, Jure or Baker, sorry. But he could be rookie listed. Like he'd help the Waffle Eagles a lot. So it could be another year. Look, we're going to take in the rookie list and beef up our Waffles team. And if we have injuries, maybe. I was surprised Jack Williams only got 1 year. Like that didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I would have given him 2.
Like he's a developing player. He's shown he can play. Okay, he didn't do much in the ruck, but he went in there. He had promising signs up forward. Like surely you give him 2 years to give him a bit of that confidence to really build.
Yeah, that security blanket of 2 years probably would have been nice, but obviously, yeah. I heard that he had a really good pre-season and then ruptured his spleen, and that really set him back. So if he has a good pre-season, we might actually see, a bit more of what he can produce next year. I think Alex Witherden saved his AFL career. I reckon he'll get another contract.
Yeah, I'd like to see him get another year at least. I think that makes sense. Petruccelli got another deal, obviously. It's the same old Petch. We know that there's quality there. Just doesn't get enough of it. Where does he play? Probably half forward and gets on ball at times and tries to break things up for us. That's fine.
I think Petruccelli would be so good at a contender.
Yeah.
He's not as much use to us just because we're going to be losing. I feel like him playing at Melbourne or Collingwood or something, he'd turn into a pretty handy role player, what Bo McCreary does for the Pies. Sam Petrevski-Seton, do you think it's necessary for him to be playing?
Just think like he was given a crack at the end, and we can all see there's talent there. I think everyone likes him. He's a good user, but he just makes mistakes. Like it just seems to me like he doesn't quite have the mental application for consistent AFL footy. Like he's been in the system for a long time now. Yes, he's had some injuries as well, but whenever he's been up and going, he just hasn't quite nailed it down. You haven't quite gone, yep, all right, we need to keep Simmo on the list. There's enough there. It's like, it's just, he just makes the odd error every now and again that makes you think, unfortunately, have we gone too far with you? I think he's in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, well, remains to be seen. Again, it might depend on how many young guys we bring in. Hopefully Liam Ryan stays. There's that link to Hawthorn.
Yeah.
That might play out during trade period. We'll wait and see.
Tyler Brockman's the other one who we're heavily linked to. So if we bring him in, then someone goes. That could be a pretty exciting one for us.
He's got all the talent in the world. Yeah, I've liked what I've seen from Brockman, so that'll be interesting. Yeah, so I guess we'll probably find out a couple of delisments over the next maybe week. You'd think exit meetings will start now, given that Simpson's future's sort of locked in. So yeah, we'll find out a bit more going forward. What else you got for us, Garby? We're on the countdown clock here.
I want to shout out to Tommy Cole because I took him as a mid-season pick in my fantasy league and he ended up playing in a premiership. So well done, Tommy. Helped get me over the line with an 80 in the grand final. Brady Hoff as well was a key part of my premiership push late on. As injuries mounted, they got a game and had a big say in some really important wins for me as I claimed my first ever fantasy premiership in my main league.
Oh, congratulations, mate. That's fantastic. I was suffering through a preliminary final loss while I was at a wedding in Ireland.
Oh, no.
Which is not ideal. In fact, Jamie Cripps and Oscar Allen were both in the opposing team and both hit hundreds against me in the prelim.
Oh, no. It's annoying, isn't it?
That was tough. But, happy for the boys to get, have their day out against the Dogs. Yeah, but that was costly for me. I had Tim Kelly the whole year. He was excellent.
Yeah, awesome. I had him in another league. He was great.
He was probably stiff not to be in the All-Australian 44. He had a great year.
Yeah, I understood why he wasn't. There's a lot of quality midfielders. There'll be 3 or 4 who'll miss out that are really unlucky. But great that Oscar got his recognition. I think that's all he deserved. Like, to kick that many goals in a team that loses so often, yeah, we're going to acknowledge it. And I think Nick Larkin should get in. I'd be really surprised. I mean, by the time people listen to this, the team would have been named. But it was just great that he got his recognition, Oscar Allen. So, good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's
all right, Drewy.
There's a lot for us to unpack over the next few weeks, but it's good to touch base and sort of have a bit of clarity on Simmo.
Yeah, give us your feedback, everyone. Let us know what you think about anything we've said, and throughout the off season, we'll try and have a few more chats and get some of your questions rolled in and attack some of the big issues around the club. But this has been a pertinent one. Thanks for all your support, and let us know what you think. Thanks, Drewy.
Thanks, Garby.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.